Hey guys, my name's Crystal Kenny, and I'm in love with creating. All things artistic and imagination involved. I'm an American girl who chased her creative dreams all the way to Paris, France, making a living using photography. This podcast takes you inside the stories of all the artsy folks I've met along the way and gives you that extra push to discover your creative gifts. The desire to create is deeply inside each and every one of us, and I give you the tools and inspiration to find a new way of living a more creative life. This is La Vie Creative, the podcast.
Today on the show, I interview Vero of France with Vero. Vero is a French-American national who grew up in France, but spent many years of her adult life in America, navigating between two cultures. She's created a beautiful group of online Francophiles. She inspires people to learn French. She gives tours of France. She has really showed her love of France in many ways, and I can't wait to share her story with you guys today. So welcome to the show, Vero. I'm so excited to have you here today.
Oh, thanks, Crystal. An honor, really. La Vie Créative is a great podcast. I've been listening to you for a while.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure to meet all these creatives locally and share your stories. And I've been following you for many years too. You've built this beautiful business, France with Vero. You've been inspiring so many Francophiles and many more people. But I want to go back to the beginning. Tell us a little bit about what part of France you're from and your life.
Okay, well, I am a French native, and I was born just a few years ago in Toulouse in southwestern France. And my father's job means that we traveled around, we moved around quite a bit. So by the time I left high school, I had already lived in 4 or 5 different French regions, including Paris. And at some point in time, I moved to the United States right after getting married in 1996. And I ended up living in Seattle, Washington, or right outside Seattle, actually, for 23 years. And in 2019, I came back permanently to France, and I am now happily settled in the beautiful Loire Valley in the city of Tours.
Lovely. The Loire Valley is so beautiful and a little calmer than Paris. So that's a nice, middle ground, right?
Yes. And close to Paris, but away from the commotion, as I like to say.
Exactly. And what was it like returning to France after so much time in the States?
It was, there was a bit of an adjustment, but really not that much, because for the duration of my American years, I came to France about twice a year. And because of my activities in Seattle, I constantly researched and discussed French life with students or clients. So it was eerily familiar when I came back. It was just, and France had changed, like the US had changed. So I had to get used to, the French administration had actually improved, I thought. And there were actual websites where you could actually do things. Or, the healthcare, that little green card, la carte vitale, that did not exist when I left in 1996. So I came back and they gave me a green card, after having a green card in the States for a few years, I got my little carte vitale and I was like, oh, okay, so this is new. But really, it wasn't a huge adjustment, I would say.
Yeah. And then when you returned to France, you started France with Vero. So tell us a little bit more about it. You're running this blog, you do online videos, you teach French. I mean, you're doing many things under the brand.
Yes, I do wear many hats. Actually, when I returned in 2019, I was in my 50s, and that was a bit of a gamble after 23 years away. I left my son, my friends, most of my friends in Seattle, and I returned to France knowing that I wouldn't be able to find salaried employment without a strong network, which I didn't have anymore after all those years. So I returned as a tour guide with a new career. I was hired and trained by a big agency in the United States, which is known as Rick Steves Europe. And in 2019, the year I lived in France again, I was on the road for 6 months learning how to be a great tour guide and tour director with Rick Steves tour guides. And so I didn't come back with France with Vero. France with Vero only happened because our little friend COVID showed its ugly nose in 2020, right in time for my birthday in March, actually.
Oh my goodness, what a way. I mean, I love how you pivoted like that. I mean, it's really scary to first come back to France and try to find a job. You find a job, and then the
Uh-huh.
world ends for 3 years. Obviously people weren't traveling,
Yep.
tours were canceled. So what made you pivot? What inspired you?
Well, I actually found Rick Steves, or they found me, or we found each other before I moved back. So even though I was not an employee, because tour guides are contractors, and it was going to be a seasonal job, I took a chance, but I knew I had something to fall back on. I also had savings.
Yeah.
And tour guiding really is a great transition for me based on what I've done before, because I've always been a teacher, an adult educator. That's what I did in Seattle. Also a
Yeah.
corporate experience with operations, things like that. So all of that came together. I thought, oh, it's great. I love talking about France. I did that in Seattle on my blog, which was called French Girl in Seattle for many years, and the Facebook community I built around that. And I thought, great, tour guiding is going to be the perfect transition. And it was. But then COVID happened, and then the job assignments were gone in a matter of weeks. I mean, the tourist
Yeah.
industry, as you know, was hit, and yours as well. There was no more jobs. There were no more tour assignments. So it took me a few days in March of 2020. And then I decided I wasn't going to reinvent the wheel. There was a Facebook community that had been following me for years because of my blog. And I created a Patreon program, and I started teaching French again, but online this time. And I started this online business known as France with Vero. And that's how it was born in 2020.
I love that. I love when people can wear many hats too, because I think as creatives, many times people are like, oh, they're doing too many things. They have to choose one thing, and what would you say to those people,
Yeah, well, and in France in particular, if you know French culture, the French things have changed in a good way. But there used to be a time when once you had a label in France, once you were labeled this or that in terms of the profession you had chosen, it was very hard for people to imagine you doing something else. And I tell you, to explain what I was doing when I launched France with Vero in 2020, I could see people just looking at me, not understanding what I was saying to them. They were like, their minds were blown. They were like, what? So you're doing what? Virtual tours on Facebook? What is that? Of course, by now, everybody knows about Zoom and virtual things, that culture has changed a lot. But in France in 2019, 2020, it was still pretty much, oh, so you were this and now you're doing this. And people were scratching their heads a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. They're like, what is she doing exactly? And how did you find, the confidence to do that? Because I know, especially, going from this different world, did you ever doubt yourself, or you're like, no, I'm just going to do this and this is it?
I did doubt myself, and especially with tech aspects, because virtual touring was a brand new world to me. Teaching, I know how to do. Public speaking, I know how to do. I've done that in the past, but putting everything, running a live tour on Facebook or on YouTube, that was brand new. So of course I doubted myself. I doubted that people would even watch. And then my confidence grew as I saw people were actually watching, and I got great feedback and people were enjoying what I was sharing. And I got help. I had a good friend who's also a content creator who helped me with the tech stuff and cheered me on and answered some of my questions. I helped him with other things. And that's how it happened. But of course, I doubted myself. I still do at times.
Yeah. And it's good to hear that, because I think a lot of people are looking at other people online. They're like, wow, they're doing all these things. And how do they do it? And we all doubt ourselves. That's just part of the process.
It's and it's healthy. Because if you doubt yourself and if you ask for feedback, I think it's positive, because you get some input from other people, and maybe you look at an issue or a question you have from a different perspective, and it's going to help you get better in the end.
Exactly. And talk a little bit about your community. You have a very strong online community. You have the private Facebook group. Talk a little bit about your group.
Well, I was very lucky because, like I said, that blog, French Girl in Seattle, my readers were originally my neighbors and friends in Seattle. They were so nice. And then it grew and grew when I started the Facebook community. So essentially almost 85 to 90% of the followers in the France with Vero online community now are in the United States. That's where I lived. Those are the people who have followed me from the start. I do have French people. I do have Australian people as well, but it's mostly Americans. And they are people who love France, who are Francophiles. And I seem to attract people who like to explore France beyond Paris. That's the message I've always pushed. I've lived in places outside Paris. I think Tours is the Loire Valley is probably my sixth French region now. I make the connections between what you see in Paris, French history in Paris, and what you find in other regions. And so it seems to be that the people who follow France with Vero appreciate that and are very savvy travelers. They visit all of France.
You've grown this amazing group of Francophiles online, and talk a little bit about the group, what you guys do, how you connect.
Well, first of all, I share content almost daily on social media, and they all enjoy that. And then we also have a private Facebook group called La Bande de Véro, which La Bande in French is slang for your posé, I guess, your guys. And we have, when I'm not touring, we meet on Zoom about once a month, and we discuss travel topics and other topics. But we also interact almost daily in that private Facebook group. And they have meetups set up in their corner of the woods over there. Wherever they are, there is a database and they connect with each other. And in the fall, I'm setting up a couple of meetups for those who will be in town in September and October in Paris. So we're always in touch, essentially.
That's wonderful. I mean, as we just said, you have an amazing group and people sharing this common passion for France. And why do you believe so many creatives are attracted to France?
I don't know. It's a good question for, being French, it's a little hard for me to answer that question. But because I was away from France and became really homesick after a while, I think I can see that there is a perceived lifestyle in France that really appeals to people from other cultures, especially Americans. That's the culture I know best after France. So, in terms of the architecture, the art, the history, and then people always mention the food and the wine and the cheese. So there's a combination of factors. And so many artists moved to France and found their creative streak also in France. So I think it's a combination of all those things.
Yeah, it makes complete sense. I think a lot of people who live in France are like, it's perceived ideas of what it's like to actually live here. Like you said, it's a little different when you live. I always tell people, maybe just vacation in France. You can just get all the best stuff and not deal with French administration. That's always fun not to do that.
Yes, and that's the difference between being a visitor, even a long-term visitor, and being somebody who lives in the country. Your life becomes, after a while, very mundane. Even if you're retired, there are the chores that you used to do at home that you'll have to do. There is the administration. And so it's not quite the dream that many people have when they first decide to move to France or Italy or other countries as well.
For sure. And I think that's something we like to let people know, just so they're not like upset when they find this stuff out the hard way.
Right. So, we try to warn them, but Crystal, the truth is, I think everybody, if people ask for my advice, I would say everybody's got to find their own truth and everybody's got to make their own way. So people should try it. And then if it's not for them, people sometimes leave, and that's okay.
Exactly. You got to try it out, see if it's what you envisioned, and then adapt from there, because that's what it's all about. I think even if it's not what we imagine, it can turn into something beautiful anyway. So I think
there's always something beautiful. And even out of COVID I think positive things came out of COVID, which was hard to see in 2020 and 2021. But for me, my life now, my personal life, my professional life are completely different from what they were when I came back from the US in 2019. And many opportunities came out of that time during COVID and the lockdowns. So even if opportunities came out of that, then I think they'd come out of anything, probably.
Yeah, for sure. I think the pandemic changed so many lives in so many ways. But I also feel this was like a mass awakening for so many people. They're like, what am I doing with my life? Who am I? And we got the chance to try some new things and see where we could connect or figure things out based on how life had changed for everybody.
Yeah, and even in France, we were talking earlier about how hard it was in France. It used to be hard to change, to go a different route based on the studies you had done, the schools you had gone to. People were surprised if you changed your course. But I think that with COVID now, we see that a lot of people have decided that what they were planning to do or doing before COVID in the end was not for them. And I think there's a better understanding of that now, even in French society that tends to be a little bit more stuck in its ways than, for example, in the US, I think.
For sure. I know so many French people have told me, I like that Americans are allowed to change more easily. Like you said, you get in your studies and you're expected to do your studies and you don't change, and that's
Yep.
changing. And I think you're a little out of the box for that reason as a French native. And I know that you're from France, but can you talk about some of the ways like France has inspired or changed your life? I mean, you were gone for 20 years and you came back, and obviously France is your brand. France is a big part of what you do. So talk a little bit about that.
France is my brand. France is a big part. It's essentially what I do, but France is also what I love. And I have a very deep, deep love of France, though I lived away for a really long time. And France is what's familiar. I was born and raised during my, what do we call those years? Formative years, I guess. The French education system, went to school in France. So the values that are, important in France, all of that is part of who I am. So France, I think, inspires me because I get France with its good sides and its not so good sides. I get it. I understand. I know where people are coming from, and I really enjoy being back here.
I think that's well said and very true. And you can see it through your work how much you have a love for your country. And talk a little bit about where you're going with the brand. What are some of your new exciting upcoming things for France with Vero?
Well, I this year was a big year for me because I actually invested. You know how they say you have to invest in your business to make it grow. And
Yeah.
this business right now is a one-person operation. I don't have an assistant. I don't have a photographer. So I had to do everything by myself the last 2 or 3 years, which came to be too much. And I switch hat throughout the year. During the touring season, I tour, and then I do other things. I teach in the winter, etc. So this year, I actually invested in a beautiful new website. The old website I had been created to promote the French Girl in Seattle blog, and it helped me during the COVID years, but it wasn't right anymore. So the big investment I had this year was to develop a new website that captured what I do, and also I think features heavily this great community that follows France with Vero. I have testimonials from patrons and followers there. And I really like what Janet, who's my website developer and a patron, on top of being a great website developer, has done. But now looking forward, the touring season, second part of the year, now we're starting September, October. When that is done, I'll go back to teaching. And I'm really looking always for ways of continuing to share France and French life. And if possible, tell lesser told stories or take my community to lesser known places that I know that most or many Americans don't really visit when they come to France. I recently did that with my vacation on the Atlantic coast. So that's what I plan to continue doing. It's not that I have a big project coming up because the big one was the website this year, but I'll continue doing what I've done for the last 2 or 3 years, essentially.
The new website is very beautiful. I was looking at it earlier. It's well
Thank you.
done. Nice work.
Well, nice work, Janet.
Yeah,
It was a good
definitely.
collaboration. We worked on it through the winter. It was a lot of work, but I think the result was worth it.
Definitely. A joint collaboration.
Mhm.
Where do you find new inspiration in France? Obviously, you're always coming up with new ideas, new things that you want to share with your group. So, where do you go to find inspiration to keep your ideas evolving?
Well, Crystal, it's every day. I'm very lucky that my job as a tour guide, as an itinerant tour guide, 6 months of the year takes me back to French roads. And I mean, I go everywhere with my American travelers. So whenever I see something, I'm a great people watcher. So whenever I see something that seems really interesting, like when I see a story that'll be worth telling, I'll take a picture really fast. And then when I get back, I'll write a blog post about it or a vignette. So what I see on my travels totally inspires me, definitely. And then every day I walk around my city that has a beautiful historic areas, and I watch people at the market have enjoying an apéro. So my inspiration is daily life. Wherever I look around me, I find inspiration. It's the French life I missed when I was away, the last few years especially, and I am now fully immersed in it, and it continues to inspire me and the stories I tell.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, with all your travels and wanderings, you're always finding new inspiration, which is true for a lot of visitors in France. And can you talk a little bit about one of your favorite stories about France or favorite places in France? I mean, you give tours, you do the live videos. There has to be somewhere that your heart is more drawn to or a favorite story about French history.
I wish I could answer that. There are definitely time periods in history, in French history, that I like more than others. And because I live in the Loire Valley, it so happens. Actually, my patrons asked that question when we were in Langeais, a lovely town near Tours, last Sunday. Somebody said, "What is your favorite time period in French history?" And I said, the Renaissance, the 16th century. This is when all our beautiful chateaus here were built. If I had to pick a time period where I'd like to be, traveling back in time and revisit France, it would be the turn of the 20th century, what was known as the Belle Époque, before World War One. So there are time periods I'm interested in, but as far as the places, I am, as we say in French, un bon public. So I'm easy to please. Wherever I go in France and I find a thing to do, an activity or a place I hadn't seen before, I'm discovering in depth to and reporting on, I get very excited about it. And I did that during my recent vacation at the end of July when I visited Arcachon on the French Atlantic coast and the Cap Ferret. I hadn't been in several years, and I spent a whole week there. And it just kept giving. There were so many stories to uncover. I filmed the virtual tour that I shared when I came back. So I would say, je suis bon public. I'm easy to please. I'm in France, and I'm happy. Whatever I find, I'm happy.
I love that. It's so true. You're always just rediscovering your own country in a way and then sharing that excitement with others who are already excited to be there.
Absolutely. And one of my favorite books when I was in college, I was an American studies major, so literature, history, everything was focused on the U.S. And one of my favorite books was Steinbeck's Travels with Charlie. And John Steinbeck's book, where he goes around the country and rediscovers in many ways his own country with his dog as he travels around the US. And sometimes I feel a little bit like that on that big bus when I travel around with American travelers for Rick Steves, because I was away for 23 years. And it's such a treat. I mean, I get totally enthusiastic about returning to some of those areas. And I think it rubs off on on the people who travel with me because they see me so excited about it and they get excited too.
Sure, yeah, happiness is contagious. So that's very true. And how do you define creativity in your own words?
Well, that's a tough one. I'd say coming up with new ideas, new concepts, making new things, and maybe also finding new solutions to problems. That would be being creative. But see, my answer is kind of a left brain answer, because I am very much left brain, very organized, rational, analytical. And I know there are other definitions of creativity out there.
For sure. I mean, there is no right answer in my opinion. It's a question I ask all my guests, and I've gotten many different answers. So yeah, I
Of
feel
course.
the same way as you. It's, finding solutions. We all are creative, and what's something you would go back and tell your younger creative self? What would you tell that person?
Well, my younger creative self, I like to think, did not exist. I never saw myself as a very creative person. In fact, the French school system is rumored to be pretty strict, and it was. I remember when you asked that question, I thought of I was in art class, probably in 6th grade, and we were supposed to do something. I forgot what it was, to draw something. And the teacher walked up and down the aisles looking at what the students were doing. And when he walked up to my desk, I remember very clearly, he said something along the lines, I wouldn't quit, my day job. He
Oh,
was
no.
not impressed. To this day, I still draw stick figures. So for me, I never considered myself a creative person. So I'm not sure what I would say to my younger creative self. But looking back, I would probably say, just try anyway. Don't listen to people. Just try, because it's best to say, I tried and failed, than to say, I wish I had.
I think that's great advice, definitely. And that brings me to my next question. I mean, what would you say to people who are searching for their creative gifts? Because I think many people believe they're not creative, they're not artistic. So what would you say to those people to help them?
I would say that one day they will find something, a form of creativity that they can define their own, they can find their own definition of creativity. Like I said, I left brain person. I never considered myself creative, probably part of because of what I experienced in school. And then I started this little blog in my suburban American kitchen one day, and I started writing about France. It's called French Girl in Seattle. And then, I have more and more readers, and then people are actually pleased with what I write. And the feedback I get is really encouraging. And then I realized that creativity can also be writing, and that I have a voice. I can actually write in English, no less, and that they write, they read my stories. So I would say, define your own idea of creativity. You don't need to be a painter, a talented photographer like Crystal. You can define creativity. What works for you? What rocks your boat? What energizes you? What inspires you?
Oh, I think that's great advice. Thank you so much. And what are some tools that have helped you along the way that you would recommend to other people as far as like growing your business, being creative? Are there any things that really helped you along the way?
Uh, Growing the business in terms of marketing, for example, I was lucky to have worked in the corporate world, both in France and the United States. And so all those skills I use every day in running my business. So that is something I've been lucky to experience before I launched this small business. But to get better as a tour guide, for example, I remember that in 2020 and 2021, my friends would call me. I lived in a 19 square meter, that's what, 200 square feet. So apartment that became very famous under the Parisian rooftops. We called it the seventh heaven in my community. And I went out. You remember the first lockdown, Crystal? We could go out 1 hour a day, unless you have a dog, right? So you could go out more often.
Exactly.
Don't have a dog. So I would go out 1 hour a day, walked in the Bois de Vincennes. That probably saved my life, actually. And the 23 remaining hours of the day, I would be in that 19 square meter apartment launching a business. And my friends would call and say, oh, we baked this afternoon, or did you see that new show on Netflix? People, social media was full of recommendations of Netflix shows. And here I was working 10 hours a day on an 11-inch laptop, just starting a business. So what helped me a lot was getting better. So I would listen to lots of podcasts in 2020 and 2021, a lot of podcasts, especially history podcasts, because I wanted to be a better tour guide by the time tour assignments returned, or online conferences. Radio France has great ones. So I would work essentially and try to become better at what I did. That's what I used: podcasts, online conferences, and then of course the internet. I don't know how we did it before the internet, actually.
It's so true, because there's so much we can learn for free, nowadays. The internet is this endless like book, that if we choose it to not watch cat videos, we can use it for other things too.
Yes,
And
you can.
better ourselves. I think that's great advice.
And it's all free. I mean, you go to YouTube, you can learn about anything for free. It's really amazing.
It's quite amazing. And there's so many universities that even offer like free online courses now and things like that. So there's no excuse for, if you want to learn something new, you just have to go for it. And I love that you use the pandemic to better yourself and, work on those things, because you were starting all these new businesses and new ideas.
Well, I was in full survival mode, you see. So it was like, I have to make this a success. It has to work, France with Vero. I have to make a living out of this, because I don't know when my tour assignments will return, if they ever do. So when you are in full survival mode, it's amazing the stuff you do. It's amazing the efforts you make, the strength you find in yourself, or the motivation even.
I love that. That's so true because you have no other choice, It's like, come on,
That is right.
pay my rent. I completely understand that. It happened to me during the pandemic too. And I think that's a great note to end on, guys. And where can people connect with you online? Check out your website, check out your tours.
Well, thank you for asking. France with Vero, friendswithvero.com, which is that website that connects to just about everything I do. And then I publish on social media, Facebook, Instagram, almost daily, lots of Instagram stories that talk about French life and even teach French now and then. And YouTube, all my virtual tours, I think that's about 250 or more now. I use YouTube as a video library. So all my virtual tours, Paris and beyond, are neatly organized, left brain, on my YouTube channel, France with Vero as well.
Perfect. Well, we'll share all that in the show notes, guys. So make sure you check out the show notes. And thank you so much for sharing your story today, Vero. We really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. It was fun. I've enjoyed. I know you were in Paris during the lockdown, so I know you totally understand what I'm describing there.
Yeah, definitely. As someone who's working in the tourism business, we all understand that perfectly.
Yep, exactly. Well, thank you so much, Crystal.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for tuning in to La Vie Creative. You can find more information on MissParisPhoto.com. And if you enjoyed this show, please feel free to share and spread the word for all my creative guests. We have the power to help them to keep doing what they love. See you next time.